With the second pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Chase Young, defensive end, Ohio State.
But you know, as they say, hail to the Redskins. Let's roll, man. Let's go.
Let's get into the tight end position and talk about each and every one of these guys. And if you want to send your super chats, send them in, and we'll get to those after I'm done breaking down these tight ends. So I was really fascinated to look at the position and find that there were some guys at the tight end position that we have that I didn't know were on the roster. One is Caleb Wilson that Cal L brought up. I didn't know he was on the team. I was a Caleb Wilson guy, excuse me. Last year, Caleb Wilson was a draft pick in 2019. He was a draft pick in the 2019 draft, 7th round pick of the Arizona Cardinals, I believe. Obviously did not make their roster. And the Redskins ended up picking him up at some point, whether it be this offseason or during the season, and we just didn't know about it. He was stashed away on the practice squad, whatever the case may be. That was a guy that I really liked out of UCLA. I liked him out of UCLA. And he wasn't much of a blocker, but he was a supremely gifted athlete, and he had really good hands. Wasn't the best route runner, but you saw the potential for this guy to be a problem at the next level with his pass-catching prowess. Keep in mind, Caleb Wilson ran a 4.58 at the combine last year. So this was a guy that I thought had some upside, and I'm shocked to see him actually on this Redskins roster. So that's a guy that I'm excited about just because he's a pass catcher. You guys wanted Hunter Bryant as a pass catcher. Caleb Wilson is every bit the pass catcher that Hunter Bryant was, and he's faster. Hunter Bryant ran a 4.6, like a 4.66, 4.64, something like that at the combine. Caleb Wilson ran a 4.58. So you're talking about a better athlete than that of Hunter Bryant and Caleb Wilson. So I'm excited about Caleb Wilson. You know, I'm excited about his upside. The question is, can he be better in the blocking department? That remains to be seen, but he's definitely a guy that I'm excited about. Didn't even know he was on the roster. You keep going and you look at the guy behind him in Logan Thomas. Yes, I finally remembered his damn name. Logan Thomas is a guy that the Redskins staff, Kyle Smith in particular, really excited about Logan Thomas. I am, however, not as excited about him. I do understand that there is some upside. This is a guy that has not been playing the tight end position for a very long time. And I know some people keep bringing up, well, he was a tight end before in college and quarterback, but he was primarily a quarterback. He wanted to play quarterback. He got drafted as a quarterback. He spent his first couple of years in the league in Arizona under Bruce Arians as a quarterback. That failed, and it failed miserably. He went back to being a tight end, but he still hasn't done it at a high enough level for us to feel confident that he's going to do it at a high level at the NFL game. However, you're seeing bits and pieces of him starting to put things together. He's a big guy, man. He's 6'6", right around 250, 55 pounds. He's a big dude. And so you couple the size with the athleticism that he has, and there's some things that the Redskins think they can tap into with Logan Thomas. I want to see it. I'm from Missouri. You got to show me. And so I don't believe it until I see it with him. But Kyle Smith is definitely excited about Logan Thomas. That is for certain. So then you move on to a couple of guys that were here last year. And I think, to me, they're the leaders in the clubhouse to make the roster. You start with the incumbent starter from a year ago, and that's Jeremy Sprinkle. Sprinkle me, bitch. Sprinkle me. And Jeremy Sprinkle, to me, is a guy that I loved. Let me say this. I loved Jeremy Sprinkle's game coming out of Arkansas. I thought this guy had tight end number one type of capabilities written all over him. And I said, at worst, this guy's going to be a dynamic tight end number two. All right. I thought he had the capability to be like a Demetrius Harris. If you guys recall, Demetrius Harris was in Kansas City with the Chiefs. He was like their third tight end, but he was a beast athletically, did some really good things for them, got a deal to go to the Cleveland Browns. I don't know how things are really working out for him there, but I just know the guy was athletically gifted, and I saw some of the same characteristics and traits with Jeremy Sprinkle, and I actually thought he was a quality blocker at Arkansas as well. So I felt really good about Jeremy Sprinkle. And for whatever reason, he's been inconsistent with his hands here. He'll make a ridiculous catch, and then he'll drop an easy one on third down. And so that's been an issue. His blocking hasn't been all that great. And I really don't know what to expect week to week from Jeremy Sprinkle. Am I getting good Jeremy? Am I going to get lackadaisical Jeremy? I really don't know. But the talent is still there. I don't know if we've seen the best of Jeremy Sprinkle or if he can take it to another level. If he can't take it to another level, then he's no better than a second, worst case scenario, third tight end. He's an NFL tight end for sure, but he's no better than a second, worst case, third tight end on an NFL roster if he can't take it to another level. He had a chance to start last year. This is his final opportunity to prove that he belongs here in Washington. If it doesn't go well for him in 2020, he'll be dismissed, I believe, after this season or before it. We'll see what happens. Jeremy Sprinkle, though, is a guy with a legitimate shot to make this football team. Same can be said for Hale Henches. Here's a guy that came on last season and did some really good things. I was impressed. I told you guys as much. Remember, I made a joke when Bill Callahan talked about all the young, talented players on the offensive side of the football. He named Terry McLaurin and Steven Sims and Darius Geis. And then he threw in Hale Henches. And I said, what in the hell are you talking about, Bill? Like, this guy doesn't belong in that category. And then Hale Henches showed me some things late in the season. Caught the touchdown pass versus the Giants. Had himself a good ball game in that game. And played well down the stretch versus the Eagles and the Cowboys. And so I said, I don't know about you, but Hale Henches impressed the hell out of me down the stretch. And he can block a little bit. He can catch the football. He's not a tremendous athlete, but he's athletically gifted enough. He moves well enough that he's no better than a second tight end. But I think he could actually be a credible second tight end. I can tell you this much. He will be one hell of a third tight end. That is for sure. Okay, so I'm convinced at worst, Hale Henches is a number 3 tight end on this football team this upcoming season. I like Hale Henches, and I think there's a place on this roster for him. And I think he's got a legitimate shot of making this football team. Now, you get to all the guys that are coming in, the other guys that are coming in to this team. You start with the guys that the Redskins signed this offseason. They signed Richard Rodgers, the ex-Green Bay Packers draftee out of California. He then moved on and has been in multiple spots in the NFL. Last place that he was in was Philadelphia. This is a guy that had some flashes early in his career in Green Bay, but really hasn't lived up to the billing. I'm not impressed by Richard Rodgers. Never have really been a Richard Rodgers guy, so I'm not expecting a ton out of him. He's solid in the run game. He's solid as a pass catcher, but he doesn't stand out in any facet of his game. So I'm not big on Richard Rodgers. It wouldn't shock me if he made this team. They signed him for a reason to come in and compete. But if you're talking upside, just about every guy on that artwork, every guy on that thumbnail has a higher upside than Richard Rodgers, maybe with the exception of Markus Ball. Speaking of Markus Ball, that's the guy you see next to him in a Panthers jersey. Do not discount Markus Ball, okay? Here's why I say this. He was a guy that was a late bloomer at Ohio State, couldn't really get on the field until his final year at Ohio State. Really the last 2 years at Ohio State, he started to make a name for himself. But he was the full-time starter his final year. Did some good things those last 2 years, put up some decent numbers. Nothing to really write home about, but you start to see some flashes from him. He ends up in the league on multiple teams. Last year and the year before, he was with the Panthers. So this man has not only 1 year, but yet 2 years of experience with Ron Rivera. He was also in the offense last year with Scott Turner. So do not discount in a shortened offseason what that could mean for a guy like Markus Ball. Quietly, shh. They signed Markus Ball when no one was paying attention before free agency even started. So that tells you they have a level of comfort with Markus Ball. All right. They did not sign him just to sign him. They signed him not to teach the other guys. This isn't a backup quarterback that's going to have an impact in the quarterback room. This isn't a guy they're signing to have an impact in the tight end room that can help teach the scheme. This is the guy that they look at and say, he's good enough to make this football team, and he knows our system. So do not discount Markus Ball. I don't think he's going to beat out all of these other guys. But then again, these other guys have not proven themselves. Thus, don't count out Markus Ball, okay? There are 3 spots available at tight end for this team potentially. Maybe 4. I'm going to go off the track record that Ron Rivera has in Carolina and say that he's going to continue to keep 3 tight ends. There are 3 spots. None of them are spoken for at this point. I'd like to think that Jeremy Sprinkle and or Hale Hinches will have at least one of those spots, possibly 2, okay? But don't discount a guy like Markus Ball being one of those 3 tight ends. I would not do that if I were you. And finally, of course, there's the guy that we started this conversation with, Thaddius Moss. Unlike the rest of these guys on this team, he wasn't drafted into the league, or he wasn't signed by the Redskins as a free agent before the draft. He was signed after the draft. All the rest of these guys were on this football team prior to the draft taking place. So he's the latest to add to the roster. He's the newest comer. Now, with that being said, to me, he has the greatest opportunity to put a stranglehold on the starting position. Now, you got to make the football team first. If he's healthy, I think talent-wise, he's probably better than every one of these guys because of the combination of being able to catch. First of all, he's got the best set of hands of any of the tight ends on the roster right now, as constructed. Best set of hands, not close. Okay, that's a given. Athletically, he is not the best, and you probably could look at 3, 4, maybe even 5 guys that are athletically more gifted than Thaddius Moss. And also, size-wise, he's probably the in the doghouse there as well. I think he's the shortest of all the guys, and probably has one of the shorter wingspans. So in that department, not really great there either. But what he lacks in size, what he lacks in sheer athleticism, he makes up with toughness in the run game as a blocker and his ability to run routes and catch the football. He's a clean route runner. He doesn't get a ton of separation, but he knows how to sit down in zone coverage, make himself available, and he knows how to catch the football in traffic. And so there's no doubt in my mind, if he's healthy, he's making this football team. All right. So when I look at this group of tight ends, I'm fascinated by a few names. I'm fascinated by Caleb Wilson, as should you. I told you he ran a 4.58, and he was a guy that did some really good things at UCLA. He's really talented as Caleb Wilson, all right? He's got some talent, man. And so Caleb Wilson is a guy I'm intrigued by. I'm intrigued by Logan Thomas. Obviously, Kyle Smith and company are intrigued by him as well. I'm intrigued by Thaddius Moss. And to a certain degree, I'm intrigued by Markus Ball. I think I know who Hale Hinches is, and I'm comfortable with him being one of 3 tight ends on this roster. Same thing could be said for Jeremy Sprinkle. I know who he is to this point, and I'm pretty comfortable with him being one of 3 tight ends on this roster. The one guy that I'm really not that interested in, seen enough of him, know who he is at this point of his career, know that there's really no upside, is Richard Rodgers. So outside of, Richard Rodgers, you're talking about 6 guys that I'm excited to see compete for 3 spots. Now, how is this going to go? I don't know. But I'm excited about Caleb Wilson. I'm excited about Thaddius Moss. And I'm intrigued, all right, not as excited, but more so intrigued by Logan Thomas. Because I've seen him, but he's still raw because he's still making that transition. But he's got something that most of the other guys, outside of maybe Sprinkle, have, and that's size. He's a big kid at 6'6", 250, 255. He's a big dude, is Logan Thomas. So outside of Sprinkle, who is also in that 6'6" neighborhood, you know, the rest of these guys are 6'4", 6'3", somewhere in that neighborhood. You might get one more 6'5" guy in there, but for the most part, you know, you're not talking about guys that are huge in size. But I'm intrigued by this group. I don't think it's as bad as you guys want to portray it out to be, and as bad as we've made it out to be. I'm guilty as charged as well. I can't separate myself from you guys. I've thought that we needed to upgrade, and I thought we needed to, and I still think we can upgrade the tight end position. Don't get me wrong. But this wasn't the draft to not have a second-round pick and want to upgrade the tight end position. And thus, we found ourselves in a position where the best tight ends weren't available, and they decided to go in a different direction, and I was okay with that. And now having a chance to take a hard, long look at the roster at the tight end position, I'm intrigued by a number of guys and what they could potentially bring to this offense in 2020.